then it became a lifestyle. The more I go, the more it's, for me, it's a way of also of elevation, pushing the limits, your limits, and also the norms of the society.
Art is a spiritual gift, so for me it's a way of awakeness to yourself, to your capacities, awakeness because you were able to express your emotions, your inner world, awakeness also towards people. First is yourself, the second is people, because it puts you in a relation with people, connect with people, either it's a music, scene or film or theater, you're always in connection with people.
It was a great way to talk about the narratives that I was familiar with, but I struggled to kind of write in words. I always say I think I can draw because I can't write.
Actually, music is life. Like they say always, music is life. So actually, life without entertainment, music and art is like, it's nothing for me. It's nothing. Life without music and art and everything is nothing for me. Because, when even you are tired and you listen to music, it gives you back into energy. Even when you are working and you are tired, sometimes you need to listen to some music and something to keep you going.
Art is for me a cure. I use art for living and breathing and run away from my problems. So for me, art is something I can't live without, With art, you are free to talk what you want to talk. You are free to do what you like to do. It is limitless. And for my mental health, art helped me a lot because of art. I used to meet people like me, people really open in their way of living, really free in the way they thinking. And I like people, honest people who just do what they want to do, who just struggle for their passion.
It's just kind of like my way of living. It's like a necessity for me, It's like breathing, Like now I'm making a new group piece with a beautiful group of dancers. And I just nowadays feel like, wow, like this is the way I want to live my life, and this is how I survive on this planet, It's like the only way of making sense of things. And yeah, I cannot imagine anything else, to be honest.
Especially percussion and drums is such a physical movement. And like when we break it down to really basic concepts of like strokes and all the really basic technique, it can be quite meditative to just work on that for like a set amount of time and just really focus on like the precision of the movements and that sort of thing, which it's now super important for me. Like every day I just spend at least an hour warming up on all the like fundamentals, and that for me is like setting my head straight for the rest of the day.
Je pense que l'art joue un rôle très très important dans ma vie. Je peux dire que depuis que je suis artiste, dire que je suis devenue une autre personne. Donc l'art a changé quelque chose. Ça m'a permis de voir le monde d'une autre manière. Ça m'a vraiment ouvert l'esprit. Donc je pense que oui, l'art joue un rôle très très important dans ma vie.
Avant la pandémie du Covid-19, l'art jouait un rôle plus ou moins central dans ma vie. Donc c'était très important l'activité artistique en cette période.
I mean, I can't imagine a world without it.
The word I use often is aiding people and seeing them enlivened, which is what really inspires me and brings me alive.
Art has always been something I understand, and I feel like I understand without necessarily having some outside input. So when it comes from me witnessing art and music, it feels like a very familiar language to me. And I think that element of being understood or understanding something makes you feel part of this planet. So for me, it's quite a vital element.
Art has always been my primary kind of mode of expression, of interfacing with the world, of making sense of things, I guess. So it was just my way of communicating, of making sense of the world, making sense of things that were happening in the world, connecting people, connecting myself to people. You know, when the West sneezes, the whole world catches a cold.
I've had kind of a strange experience with the pandemic coming in the middle of my degree. So obviously before that I was in my second year of university, and I moved to London from outside Brighton in the countryside. So being in London, first year, second year of university was like a really exciting place to be. There's obviously so much more art and music going on here than anywhere else in the country, and like it's kind of the epicenter for a lot of the musicians. So that was really interesting, like coming and being exposed to all these incredible players in person where I didn't really have that resource before. And so I was going out and seeing, you know, loads of music, two or three gigs a week minimum. The huge one for musicians was the opportunity to perform live. So yeah, that went very quickly. Musicians and performers, and not being able to do it live was kind of gutting.
Quand la pandémie est arrivée, donc notre secteur de fréquentation n'a plus cette affluence d'avant. On voyait de moins en moins le public venir visiter notre art. Donc c'était devenu un facteur assez surprenant, donc un changement littéral donc, que ça a créé donc, avec sa venue. Donc tout le monde sait que le secteur touristique est l'un des secteurs les plus touchés par la pandémie. Nous, artistes internationaux, notre art dépendait surtout de la visibilité qu'on avait en Occident, en Europe ou aux États-Unis. Donc la pandémie a fait que toute cette visibilité a été très amoindrie.
So I did a few performances online, and I must say, as much as I enjoyed sharing, I found them a bit triggering, because when you are in the moment and you realize that actually that's the only way you can share your music, it's almost like a reality check that you haven't fully realized because you were in your own bubble. But to me, at least, it was a bit triggering because I felt like I was, what I loved the most was taken away from me.
Before the pandemic, I was still living and working full-time in London. At the time, I was the president of dance in the Trinity Laban Students' Union. And I was also working as a freelance dancer and choreographer in London. And then when the pandemic hit, it was just completely unexpected change to my whole life. And my family kind of panicked and wanted me to come back to Poland, and I didn't know what to do. And because I could work from home, like from my laptop, I was like, okay, I'm just gonna go to Poland. It was really tough to not be able to work for almost 2 years. I think I wasn't really able to work like in the way I work. So with people, with touch, with contact. So that was really difficult on my mental health. I did even have a period in the beginning of the pandemic when I was taking antidepressants, which is something I never did before, you know. Also being kind of pushed out of London because I couldn't really stay, you know. I couldn't really afford it. I also enjoyed being in Poland, but it was mostly the uncertainty, you know, the precarity of the situation that kind of pushed me out. And it was just really tough, you know. It was mentally very, very challenging, very, very challenging. And I feel like the arts were hit the most, and we're kind of put like on the very end of the queue, I feel, of waiting to come back to work. And I was very kind of hurt, by this idea that I don't know how to say this very well in English, but in Poland, there was this idea of kind of like unnecessary labor, that art is kind of unnecessary. And it really hurt me, because I felt, wow, but I think we are very necessary. Our work is very necessary,
For the pandemic, I think I was in a space of time where I was heavily exploring identities, different forms of identities, be it blackness, be it queerness, be it whatever. Photographs, which was what I was mainly practicing at the time, was a way for me to not just explore these ideas, but also give visual language to these ideas. The pandemic, obviously, it affected me as much as it affected everybody else, being that we couldn't really go out, we couldn't really go through normal life activities that we have become used to. And so I wouldn't say that was so negative, because what that also provided was a chance for me to reset along with everybody else, to just take a minute to breathe and to just understand myself in the moment and also understand myself beyond the moment. And so for me, it was a chance to now think of the virtual space and how to use virtual technologies to present my art. And it's resulted in a series of exhibitions that were curated by me, and I created digital spaces where I invited different artists that were also exploring different ideas that were connected to the quarantine at the time. So it provided spaces for these artists to present their work.
A lot of my work has to do with the state of mind or a state of being beyond just the physical. And a lot of my work deals with themes of, I would say, like introspection, reflection, and a lot of these issues that are not necessarily spoken about a lot in contemporary, at least West African society. Art was a way for me to kind of like deal with the world in a way, So when the pandemic hit, it's kind of like I was preparing for a world where you just like locked away and you're isolated in your homes and stuff. But for me, it didn't feel any different. As a digital artist, it's been good, because I feel like a lot has happened that's coincided with this pandemic, and a lot of things have changed in the way we act and think and move, and we are realizing that we don't need to be constricted to like archaic ways of working, or we can find a balance between living at home and also working. But for the most part, I would say it's been positive.
I've taken part in a lot more exhibitions where my artwork has been displayed digitally as well, so like on screens, and that's like screens on different scales, and that's really nice to see, because I kind of create them digitally and they look exactly how I created them on my own screen, but just kind of larger, which is really, really interesting, because it kind of allows people to enjoy the work without that physical, paper or canvas kind of medium, which was really nice and interesting. And it also allows for like me to exhibit more than one piece at a time, because you can have them on a loop on a screen. But also I was really interested in creating animations as well. And I always thought, well, how can you sell animations, and how can you display animations in exhibitions? And NFTs and the screens that we have now in those exhibitions allows for that. So it's dramatically changed to being a lot more digital. During the pandemic, even traditional galleries were closed, and people weren't seeing the physical artworks, but people might have been exposed to a lot more digital artworks. But the kind of joy and activity of actually physically going to a gallery and meeting people and potentially even talking to the artists, that was kind of lost during the pandemic, and people still miss that even with the digital pieces. And so I feel like it's a change that's kind of stayed because people are still willing to have these exhibitions both virtually and physically. You know, that people will still go to a gallery and talk to people and meet people and see things in the physical, even if it is digital artwork that's displayed on the screen.
The pandemic really brought everything down to the lowest level because there was a time like arts and music and dance got into its peak. My class and teaching and my school was getting to its peak. I was getting to the top, and then the pandemic made everything go down. So actually brought everything down. When I say go down, I mean financially, I mean mentally, physically, and everything. Because the pandemic came in like a surprise. Nobody knew what it was, and we just had to stay indoors. So the pandemic actually brought everything to a halt. In every bad, there's a good. So there has been 1 or 2 positives. That I cannot tell lies because during this pandemic, I got to know that people also are very caring and loving. Because during the pandemic, we are not performing outside, we are not dancing outside, everything is inside, and we needed support and we needed food to survive, and the people were coming from other places to support. People were coming from different places to support. And another aspect is also we have intensive training. We have intensive training because always our training is like outside and people are watching, and during the pandemic we had to stay inside, so nobody got the opportunity to see us. So we get a chance to learn a lot of things inside by ourselves.
And the pandemic, does it attain? Well, yeah, there was an impact, maybe global impact of the pandemic, but on the individual level, mental health, no, for me, the contrary, it was also a moment where the world is getting a bit more healthy because everybody is stopping a bit, is like lowering up a bit and taking a bit distance. And for me, that was a good timing because I was saying to Baku, even that time, we artists, we used to live like that, even before the pandemic. It seems like people followed us now. The pandemic forced all the world to have a life like we do, like a retired life, observing, thinking of. So connected to mental health personally for me, it was a good moment, like outside of the perturbation global, like in the way people vibrate, in the way people lower their rhythm. And it was a very good moment for us also because we had too much things to do. And that's how we stayed here and we work on this space, you see. It depends on where you are in the world because the way the COVID impacted European people or some other in Senegal is not the same. We're not locked into our apartment and not getting out to see each other. So this is luck. Here you cannot lock down people saying it's not at all possible.
It's really giving me time for myself because we were in lockdown at that time for almost about a year. So events is not happening, and there was a time that you can't even walk outside. That was the earlier time. So before that, I traveled back to North, where the situation is very less. That has given me time to work and also have the community's support, giving me the chance to also invest in my own time because I have enough time to work. I stay fully in the studio day and night, just working.
And just being creative and not necessarily worrying about what the end piece is or what the aim of it is, just expression, and just seeing what can come out of that expression and those words on the paper, and just to be able to release fears or anxiety or emotions, or to find and remember the love that you have inside and the energy that you have too, and just to kind of keep returning to yourself and finding yourself rather than being full of fear or worries or separation and isolation. Poetry, I have shared aspects online, so I was doing that back last summer after surgery. I think the poetry came like a massive expressive aspect for me after surgery, and this rejuvenation and finding of myself again. So I couldn't stop spinning words on the paper. It's just like I'd wake up in the night and just be scrawling words out.
All the galleries and collectors have moved to social media, so it's easy to connect. Also helped me to reach many audience because all institutions at that time were moved to social media, so it makes it easy to be seen. So I would say it has really contributed positively.
I've always been the kind of artist that is pushing the boundaries of technology and how it intersects and intertwines with art, you know. So that's, I believe, my definition of Afrofuturism, which is like a buzzword that everybody uses now, but it has different meanings. Its history is complex, but for me, as an African man practicing it just means that I'm using tech, or I'm using tools to express ideas that have already existed, stories that have already existed for millennia, but I'm kind of reinterpreting it through something that's fresh and different. So in a way, the pandemic has also kind of changed my workflow, but it's also allowed me a lot of opportunities, funny, ironically, to exhibit my work. So when the pandemic came, it was like, already traveling with a Ghanaian passport is a nightmare. You know, there's so many restrictions, but then you add that on top, it just felt like there was no way to go. So it just meant that I was now turning back to working at home, you know, and trying to find ways to either do shows online. That's when I started getting into the metaverse and finding my way as an artist there. Because like I realized, okay, I can't go out there and publicly exhibit, so let me try to publicly exhibit digitally. Even though it was initially a frustration for me, it eventually led to opportunities where I was meeting more African artists than I'd met in my whole life.
So I quit my job. I then picked up a part-time job in teaching. So I actually teach architecture as well, which I really, really enjoy. I really enjoy teaching. And now I am also part of a collective that does like workshops for children, especially from like marginalized communities. Now I have that flexibility where I can maybe teach someone a little bit more about digital art, or, you know, teach a young child, you know, that digital art is, you know, a career option as well.
There was certain frustrations. One example was that one of the ways that artists, myself included, are able to thrive is through community, is through being around sometimes like-minded people that remind you that you're not crazy for doing what you do, and you're not the only one that's doing what you're doing. There are other people that are exploring different things, maybe using different mediums, but you're all in the same boat. So for a short while, I would say that sense of community was taken away because we couldn't now be in the same space physically. But the benefit of that was that we could also now go beyond just physical communities. We could also now look into digital communities because we were already in the digital space. But now how do we bring certain discussions, certain discourses that our works are tapping into this digital space and create safe spaces within that community, those digital communities. There's these ideas that art is for a very specific group of people. You know, you need to have a certain standing, or you need to look a certain type of way to be able to enter into even some of these spaces. You know, but now people can access your work from the comfort of their own home. It broke down some of these barriers. It's continuing to break down some of these barriers.
With that pandemic, nobody was going out, so I just do some video and I find a new audience. I find new followers. So a lot of people start to following what I'm actually doing, but it's bring me far from what I really want to share with people, what I really what I was working on. And it's like when I released a project, people was like, it's not really me, because they think the entertainment I was doing during the pandemic was me, but it was just for running away from my problem and just entertain them.
I think it changed how we're gonna continue to do art, how we're gonna continue to live, because we realized that that rhythm, that type of rhythm wasn't in the long term it's not what we want, at least. I like to travel, it's really nice, but there is a time where you have to be stable and build some stuff from the core, so it allowed us to do that, also.
Like Baku said, maybe the way it changed is the rhythm, as he said. We were a lot traveling, moving around, and most of the times, like the industry of art, because there's art, but there's the market of art. And maybe that change is, I don't say art itself, but we said the market of art, impact on the market. Like the market for artists like us is always pushing us to go abroad. The market is not giving us, letting us the chance to do what we have to do here. So we were already fighting a lot that time before to fight to stay here. And when the pandemic hit, we said, okay, that's the time now. That's the time now, because we were already always fighting to be rooted. We were already rooted, but more and more here, because we saw that in the future, it's not what we want, and it's not sustainable. We cannot just rely on Europe or external like big tools, Europe, and the mamas that sells the peanuts here doesn't know what you're doing. People from your region doesn't know what you're doing. And we were already having this idea of how can we go more, create another industry, market a local one that is more connected to who we are, to our realities, and we don't feel like we're just being for the sake of beautiful ices and streams for European people.
The pandemic also really pushed me to just go to therapy, and this has been like really great. And because I didn't have much work to do, and I was really not in a good place, so I ended up just going to therapy, and this turned out to be really great for me, so I am really happy that I was able to kind of focus on that for some time, and I'm still doing it, and it's great. It really like grounds me. I think there was a time in my life when I thought that therapy might make me like a normal person and I won't be able to make crazy art, But I see now how naive that was, and it really actually helps me to make the kind of work I want to make,
Well, definitely my mental health at that stage was quite poor. So on one side, I was trying to overcompensate with kind of finding as many job opportunities as possible and keep releasing music. But I could definitely see that my mental health wasn't doing really well. And I was really lucky that I got support from Help Musicians UK that helped me, they funded my therapy sessions with my therapist. And that really helped rebuilding confidence and a sense of identity that I felt like it was lost, because I also identify with my artist self. So once you don't fulfill the 360 vision of the artist, sometimes you feel like you're a bit splintered.
When the lockdown started, I still kind of had that attitude of just like trying to study and focus on my own stuff as much as possible. And so I was just pretty practicing probably 5-6 hours a day, if not more at times, and just kind of, I had nothing else to do really. There's a lot of challenges, especially for musicians, when we're losing all the performance opportunities and losing like all your work. And I would just watch the dates go by in my diary at which I was supposed to be traveling. That was pretty gutting. We're so lucky that now it's super accessible to have music production software on your laptop. And like most of my friends are musicians, so everyone was producing music on their laptop. I'm less scared of recording now, and like definitely coming out of recording myself and going back into playing in studios, you appreciate the difference. But it's definitely a really useful experience, just trying to work things out by yourself.
It was also a lot of possibility, because all of a sudden all these spaces and companies, established companies that have all this material, were suddenly just putting it online because they didn't know what to do. They didn't know how to reach their public and their audiences. And where for an artist based in Ghana, you don't have access to that type of material. It's got a VPN, it's geographically locked. All of a sudden, it was just all available to watch. And that was one of the most, I think, incredible things. And some people still haven't taken their stuff down. So the internet is the space that can connect us, and we don't need flights and visas and all those things to start a conversation. And yes, I mean, as a dancer, physical collaboration is always very special and important to me, but there's so much that can be done virtually. And I think that actually just the pandemic opened up a whole world of collaboration and content and opportunity that hadn't been there before. And it was like, oh wow, this is incredible, because now I can show people, I can send them a link. It completely changes the game, because we can't go to these shows, you know. So, and I mean, yeah, there's stuff happening here, but when you want to innovate and you need to feed yourself creatively, you need to feed, and the more you can see, I think the better.
Donc ça n'a pas changé mon style de création, toujours bon, l'inspiration est là, la fougue est là. Donc je peux dire que bien que la pandémie est très difficile, ça a quand même créé quelques ouvertures. Ça m'a permis aussi de rentrer dans ma base, c'est-à-dire bon, chez moi, la maison familiale ici à Dakar. Donc ça m'a permis de me rapprocher de ma famille. Donc voilà, donc la famille, les mamans, les frères, sœurs et enfants. Donc maintenant, à cette période, tout le monde peut bien profiter de moi pour être avec moi. Donc avant, j'avais pas assez de temps aussi pour rester tout le temps dans le cercle familial. Donc tout cela, je peux dire que je peux le prendre de façon positive.
Art definitely can have a very strong impact on society. We as artists and the work we put out, it plays very, very different roles to very different people. For some people, art is a way to heal. For some people, art is a way to be informed. For some people, it's even just mere entertainment. And so we have all these various different roles that we play as artists, and that art plays in the society. Art has the power to highlight the struggles or difficulties. It has the power to present this struggles to the forefront of conversations, to bring it into rooms that normally these conversations are not being had in.
Art is a medium that can be used in many ways. It can be used to communicate on issues affecting humanity. And I think that is the side that I'm coming from.
Pour moi, l'art peut toujours avoir un impact très positif sur les sociétés humaines. Malgré des difficultés comme les pandémies que nous connaissons ou bien les autres catastrophes naturelles qui arrivent aux populations du monde, dans tout cela, quand c'est l'art qui doit s'exprimer, pour moi, l'art peut toujours apporter un plus, c'est-à-dire un élan d'espoir, parce que imaginez que les peuples ont toujours besoin de cet espoir, de cette quiétude, de cet épanouissement. Donc moi, tout le monde sait que, bon, en tout cas pour moi, les artistes participent beaucoup à l'épanouissement des sociétés humaines. Donc que ce soit en temps d'accalmie ou en temps de pandémie, l'art a toujours un rôle positif à amener, à apporter à la société. Donc je pense que l'art est très important pour l'équilibre du monde.
Art is really important, I think, communities and interaction, and again, you know, and it could be through poetry and song and dance, like I was saying. It's a way for interaction, it's a way to enable, it's a way to express, it's a way to discover and learn as well. Learn about yourself, learn about others, see with different eyes, hear with different ears. You know, it's constant discovery. And again, people can feel recognised. They can also feel amongst as well. They can have that individual identity, remembering who they are, but also know that they're connected and there's other people that have that empathy or that sympathy or that awareness of one another.
Artists integral to how we experience life. It infiltrates when you think about performance, when you think about music, that's baked into at least the African way of existing. It's what we do. You will not walk down a street in Ghana and not see someone dance or sing or just kind of, involved in some type of movement. I thought it was really interesting that a lot of art institutions complained that the pandemic put art on a backseat, because I thought people expressed themselves in such interesting ways throughout. I mean, like there were all the videos of people like singing in hospitals, and people, writing and the poetry and all the stuff that was coming out of it. And I thought that was deeply, moving as a connecting point, and people really took, and things like social media, I mean, people will argue, but that's a form of art making. I think that we're in a form of individual expression that we're still kind of like figuring out, but that's what it is. It's a mirror to society.
Art, in general, is very good. It's something that it must be pushed in our education sector. It's something that must be pushed to our children and an upcoming generation so that they can have something on, right, like a talent, like a traditional talent. So that it wouldn't be like maybe if you are not in the office or you are not in the laboratory, then you cannot do nothing. You can also do something with the art.
Art impact on society. I mean, during that pandemic period, so many people turned to the world of art and they didn't even realise. They turned to their Netflix, they turned to nature. And nature is art in the moment. I mean, it's constantly changing, and there's canvases all around us, providing an opportunity for people to pause, to breathe differently, and to have a moment outside of their normal experience so that they can engage in a very, very different way. That gives them a moment of timelessness.
The other way, as you said, a lot of people have a lot of friends or who are locked. It was a time for them to watch films, to listen to some music, to get into art, like to recharge them. So of course, art has this power of recharging, of challenging, of healing, and I think that's really important and that's really powerful. And maybe give people attention of people seeing things they're not hearing before. That was already here, but now they have more attention to listen to themselves, to listen to the other people, and I think at the end it's really challenging the notion of relation, how we're relating to ourselves and how we're relating to people. So as you said, I think artists are definitely healers, but they heal by inspiration. At the end, the power is also opening new doors, saying, this is not the only way. You can try this way, maybe there's another way. And maybe before the pandemic, a lot of people were just locked into one way in general. But the pandemic hit and people are obliged to open the gates and see the other possibilities. And I think that's what art also can give. And art is also a political art. So it's a weapon of massive construction for me, of course, because outside of yourself, once it's yourself, your inner world, express yourself, your emotion, it becomes a tool to challenge your society, to challenge your living, to challenge, before the pandemic even, to challenge the way of life of people. So for me, before the pandemic, the questions were the same, and after the pandemic, it's still the same, the questions. So art gave us this lucidity of looking at life, looking at yourself, looking at the relation with people, and really to have a singular voice, to be able to fight and get out your singular voice.
I think every artist should be engaged in one fight. I think that if you say it like, you an artist, you have to tell something true to your public, because we can all entertain people, it's fine, sometimes to entertain your public, but at the same time, in time of struggle as COVID, you have to remember people, to take care of them, of their family. It seems like, I feel like for me, being an artist, it's being at the same time a teacher. You have to teach something to people, because when you have some inspiration, you have to know that your inspiration is not coming like just like that. There is something why God give you that inspiration, so you have to use it for sharing some good ideas, some positive vibes to people.
I exposed a lot of art that was made out of the revolution in Sudan. It's a lot of art that was used in protest, and it was printed for protest, or even like now through the streets of Sudan, you can see some of the artworks on the walls, you know, and those are really, really powerful artworks, and they played a huge role in the revolution.
Well, art is a language, and it's a language that I don't think can be doubled with anything else I can see in society. So once we have this sort of privilege to make art and to have a platform to showcase art, we are speaking to people. So to me, it's actually really important to make people feel loved and understood, and creating this connection where everyone is kind of walking together in this field of life. But I try to check up on myself a lot to make sure that what I do starts from the right intention, and for me is being real and being honest with my life experience, and actually understanding how to put this material out in the world and make people feel like it's accessible, because every language needs to sort of bring with itself this opportunity to be learned and listened to. And I guess the role in society is to speak to people, on a level that other things don't do.
I really believe that art can be kind of like first element of the chain of like changes, you know, that art can kind of ignite change.
Art really is a great tool to bring people together in that sense. In times of struggle, we're looking for some sort of hope. We want to feel strong. We want to feel powerful. And art, again, very great tool to connect with people in terms of those feelings and those things.
Market of art have locked art now into spaces and have cut a certain link or certain access to certain people to art. So if you look at Dakar, I'm not going far. Dakar, we have spaces, different spaces, contemporary art, blah, blah. But if you look at it, most of the time there's a certain production of art is not accessible to people. A certain, not everything. And then what we are trying to do in this space and what we're trying to do is how to open the gates again and how to give it more accessibility to this production and to be in interaction with the community. Because it's not just having the pretension to give to the community, we also receive a lot from the community. It's also the way to learn from the community. In this house, we learn a lot. So the pandemic helped us to open this house, to put this laboratory here, and in the work we are doing is really try to connect with the community and to give back, like to put the art, the function, social function of art at its place in the local traditional African society. Art was not disconnected. There was no space to say this is the museum specific for this is the places for concert. It was really articulated in the day-to-day life. So we are trying to experiment this. How can we articulate or at least bring our contribution in this articulation? And how can we use art like a tool to try to address the questions of the community? I think it's really important to contextualize. We are a colonized society, you know, so we're living in a life where the model is always a model coming from abroad. And then what he's saying is really important, because we're also trying to challenge this model, to say, okay, this exists, but maybe it's not the only way. All the theories of development, of coloniality, that, okay, the modernism, this is the way to take. And we are saying, okay, from our cosmogonies, from our imagination, from our culture, there are some other models, some other values, some other way of living.
Because they've monopolized art into this strange formal thing that lives in, you know, massive old buildings, and it's just a mass. And you know, this capitalist definition of the thing where you just, you know, collect and collect and collect and collect and collect and amass and amass and amass and amass. And that's one way of looking at it, but it's not driven from a place of internal connection. It's not about the art. It's about some sort of market and some sort of product, and it's capitalism. So that's not art to me, but even though beautiful things may come out of that.
Before the pandemic, I thought that like these huge metropolitan cities like London, they're like the center of everything, and they're like the most important, and I have to be there all the time. Like I really thought I couldn't leave London ever. And then when I went to Poland and I lived in a small city for a few months in Poland, you know, I just realized that life is everywhere, you know, and there is art everywhere, and there's interesting projects everywhere. So it was like really revolutionary for me, you know, to understand that it's not just about these huge cities and the drama in those huge cities, because there is so much more in the world. So that's very, very big for me, actually. And me ending up in Poland, back in my hometown, you know, and being like, wow, there are actually great artists in my tiny city, you know, like people I can work with here, you know, places I can do stuff in, you know, and this was huge.
The community engagement is very important, and it's based partly on the creative design, which is looking at spaces and changing perspective of the public, looking at spaces that haven't been used for performance. So we work in non-traditional spaces, working between trees, putting lines in, putting performers at height, putting performers on heritage buildings. Key thing is the visualization, the world that you can visit within your imagination that other art inspires. It's so important that it's integrated, that it's not, oh, we have to go to an art gallery to see this, we have to go to a museum to see that. Yes, they have their places and their purposes, but accessibility is key. And if you can take your work and place it in places that are non-traditional, that are unexpected, and offer, and it is about an offer for someone to step into your world, then you're accomplishing something, that you are connecting people together, and you're connecting and bringing people into that world, and that's what's really important.
The effects it has on the community, say directly right now at this moment, is through the art class that I did there, and photography as well. So some are within the building, some are involving walks, getting outside. It's a whole mix of age ranges. Also do like family art movements, which is yoga and arts and activities for families and temporary accommodation. So it's a whole different ways of expressing and linking up people to kind of express with art, creating projects that bring the community together more, bring people together, really have this communication happen through arts.
Well, I've been involved in a couple of community projects, and it was this kind of mentorship scheme where we were working, helping develop the young people's skills, but also creating this new work together that hadn't been performed before. So that was really exciting, and I really enjoyed the educational aspect of that as well, working with people, you know, and a lot of the guys were 16 or 17, so we were pretty close in age. They were all thinking about going to music college and that sort of thing. I think that was really cool for them, because I know they still contact me about like music college and stuff, and asking me questions about little bits of advice. So I think it was really nice to have built that relationship.
I just want my music to help people, especially make them happy, but not just that. I just want them to remember that mental health is not just thing for foreign people, because here in Senegal, a lot of people think that mental health is not something who used to happen to Senegalese people, is for a stranger. But I myself, I experienced those issues, and with my family member too. Since I was a child, I used to see people with mental health issues, and I was living with them. Health is not just your body, it's your head too, your mental too. And I want to use my music to remember them. That I suggest that people who really are aware of that do their best to remember, try to create a community, just talk about it with their dears, with their friends, and also some people who are well followed, like who have a lot of followers, can join the movement too and try to help people who are suffering inside.
Et que une femme qui crée quelque chose peut redonner la personne de l'espoir, de se dire que je peux réussir. C'est avec ses mains qu'elle a créé quelque chose. Elle peut se dire que je peux montrer un bon exemple aux autres femmes qui sont dehors et qui souffrent et qui ont des vies de malheur en se disant que moi, je ne peux réussir. Ça nous permet de leur redonner de la force et du courage pour réussir. Le fait que tu souffres et que tu peux construire quelque chose avec tes mains, ça comme je le dis, ça me soulage. Ça permet à d'autres femmes aussi de les soulager. Le fait de construire, de manipuler, de dessiner ou bien de nettoyer, ça permet à la femme de sortir tout ce qui lui brûlait de l'intérieur.
Dancing and the drumming aspect is very important in the kids' life because, since they are not going to school, two of them are not going to school, they take this drumming and dancing as a profession or as something they are learning, and it's a good because music and dance also can help them. The children themselves are happy about it because since they are learning this drumming and dancing, it is making them think and feel more proud of themselves, that even though they are not in school, they have something that they are learning. Let me put myself in the shoes of these children because I have been there before. I know how it is. I was a child like them, and I was picked up from the street by a teacher. And now I have this talent, I have all these gifts. So I think for me, it's very good and positive to impact into these children so that they can also impact to the next generation so that our tradition and our culture will not go missing. We still have other people who become teachers like me. It's voluntarily, it's from my heart, and I want to do it because nobody can know what I have until I impact into these children to do.
In architecture, I was also very used to being exposed to references and artists and designers who were white and male. And that was kind of a little bit frustrating because for me, I wanted to study architecture and I wanted to draw because of a lot of the Sudanese spaces that I enjoyed being in. And so there was a time where I was confused, not knowing if some of the interests that I had were even valid because I was not seeing it represented at all. And I think that what I find with my artworks is that I can create those own references for me. So I can really kind of create those spaces, imagine those spaces, without the judgment or without someone telling me that it's not interesting or valid. I feel like it's very important for people who have the same kind of story or struggles to carry on creating, because I think they will end up being the references for others, maybe in the future, or they will end up giving people the confidence to also end up drawing from their own references or from their own background, even if they don't see them presented to them.
Pourquoi je fais mon art? Je le fais d'abord vraiment pour partager mes émotions. Donc mon objectif pour moi, c'est de faire un travail qui peut être senti par tous les peuples, par n'importe qui dans cette planète de la Terre. Donc je ne travaille pas pour l'Afrique seulement ou bien pour l'Europe seulement, ou bien je veux faire un travail universel. Je veux juste apporter de l'épanouissement, vraiment de la beauté dans le cœur. Je veux essayer de toucher le cœur du spectateur, celui qui regarde mon art. Je veux dialoguer avec lui à travers mon art. Parce que ces tableaux-là, chacun de ces tableaux a un thème très puissant. Que je puise dans mon éducation culturelle. Je suis sénégalais, je suis africain, j'ai une certaine culture. Donc, né dans cette culture, j'essaie de porter cette culture dans mes œuvres. Mon art, je l'ai basé sur ma culture, la spiritualité qui m'habite. Donc, j'essaie de le refléter dans mes tableaux. Pour cela, afin aussi de toucher le cœur du spectateur. Parce que notre peinture, ma peinture est destinée juste à l'âme de la personne qui l'observe. Nous essayons toujours de faire des ponts, parce que c'est un pont qui peut relier deux endroits différents, différence de culture, différence de territoire, mais quand même dès qu'on jette les ponts un peu partout dans les différentes cultures, dans les différentes régions, ces ponts pourront permettre aux jeunes artistes, aux populations, vraiment de bouger, de circuler, de mieux partager leurs sentiments, leurs émotions de part et d'autre. Le monde est interconnecté, donc j'appelle tous les bonnes volontés, qu'ils soient des personnes ou bien des institutions culturelles, à nous permettre, nous artistes, de créer ces ponts universels pour permettre à la jeunesse du monde, de tous les continents, de circuler, de bouger, d'essayer d'améliorer les choses, d'apporter un plus dans le développement du monde.
The main thing I try to center in my work is narratives of underrepresented people, and I hope that anybody that doesn't see who they are in certain spaces is able to do so through my work, and to feel seen and to feel heard, and to some extent their experiences highlighted.
You never know how you will inspire the people. Actually, you never know what it will bring.
I believe my artwork promotes strength, creativity, and expression. A lot of my artwork up until now has represented pure feminine strength, and quite a few women have told me that they really do feel that connection when they look at my artwork, and I love that. I want to be able to continue to connect with people that way. I want to continue to remind them of that strength and that power, in addition to the sexiness, of course, and just to continue to inspire people and to reach out and connect with people through the kind of work that I create.
I always want somebody who sees my work to leave with a sense of empowerment. I always want somebody to feel like, okay, maybe I'm not necessarily alone in feeling a certain way. So especially for people that might look like me, who are like black or young, and maybe sometimes I've often felt like there's nobody that can understand what they're going through. It should empower people who are looking to do the creative things or do things in the creative scene, that they can also make it happen, because there is a stigma, which I've also had to deal with, of trying to overcome this idea that art is something that should be left as a hobby or something that shouldn't be taken as seriously as a doctor or a scientist. You know, I mean, we're not saving lives, you know, not trying to disrespect doctors, but in a way we're healing or caring for people in a different way. I do want people to have that sort of moment where they can reflect on something, but also allow that reflection to sort of be a canvas for something that they've never thought of before.
Music and art and everything, let's say art in general, everything is a profession in a way. Because you just don't have to be a doctor or a lawyer or a pharmacist or engineer before you know you have a profession. Art is a profession. Even though people take it as an hobby, but it's a profession.
It doesn't always have to be happy and joyful. You know, it could be any sort of season of a human being. But the fact that there's even just one person in the audience that is like, oh wow, this is me. Like, I'm not into my head anymore, and you have this outer body experience. It's a relief. It's like therapy, and you know, it's a moment for yourself. So if we all take this responsibility seriously, we actually can uplift people, help people, inspire them, just making people feel loved and understood and comfortable in their skin if they listen to my music, as I feel when I listen to my favorite records, you know.
I'm really thinking a lot that we need to connect with people, we need to find allies, you know, and this change that we're talking about that needs to happen is something that we can only achieve collaboratively, you know. So I'm just happy that we can talk and that we can continue doing things.